From New York, Mr. D'Esposito.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and for the work that you do. Madam District Attorney, I'm paraphrasing, but I believe when the chairman asked a question, your response was that a district attorney must do everything in their power to uphold the law, and if someone, for example, is charged with robbery, it should be a felony and thus prosecuted as such. Obviously, that question came about because of the rogue DA that we have in New York City, specifically in Manhattan. And I know Mr. Magaziner had just mentioned that when it comes to retail theft, we all are trying to work together. And I would say that many of us are trying to work together, but there are actually a member of this subcommittee who is a very big supporter of that rogue DA, Mr. Goldman, is a big supporter of Mr. Bragg in Manhattan. And there is no question that we are trying to work together. But when we see cities like New York City, a city that I wore the uniform in, I was a proud NYPD detective for my entire career, those cities are suffering because of policies put in place by Democrats. That's without a question. We have in the state of New York, the governor, who was a Democrat, the state legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, Democrat control, put into place criminal justice reform, bail reform, and at no point at any time did they have any conference with people in law enforcement who were actually on the street making sure that they were living out their oath to protect and serve. At no point did they have conversations with the men and women who wore the uniform, who were wrestling illegal firearms from people's hands. Those conversations never happened. They did it because they believed that they were going to reform our criminal justice system. And I will say that as someone, again, who has spent a career in law enforcement, there are reforms needed, but they aren't reforms that need to be painted with a broad brush. So I want to thank you for saying what you said and making us all realize that when someone is elected district attorney, it doesn't give he or she the ability to rewrite, in New York's case, the penal code and get to pick and choose what crimes they prosecute. This has led in places like New York, and not just the city, but in places like my district in the southwest corner of Long Island, where you now walk into places like CVS, and when you walked in with your family and you grabbed that little basket because you didn't want to do a lot of shopping, you just wanted to do a little, so you had the basket. No more baskets. Why? Because people were taking those baskets, filling them up with whatever it is that they wanted, and walking right out the door. Why? Because of the laws that were put in place by the other side of the aisle, there was really no repercussions. And it literally took the handcuffs out of law enforcement's tool belt and put the handcuffs on prosecutors. So what I'm asking here today is, what can we do? I mean, what is it that members of Congress, what can we do to work with local law enforcement agencies besides changing the justice reform? What have you seen that has been successful in your area that we can do to curtail some of the disasters that we're seeing?
I think what you're doing here by example, coming together around smart legislation, which has bipartisan support, is a great step. But for me in San Diego, whenever I'm fighting battles, I emphasize that public safety, the safety of our children, our businesses, our communities, small and large, that is not a political issue. That's a human issue. That's a human rights issue. Nothing will thrive without safety. You take out our police, you take out our law enforcement, you take out our prosecutors, or you make them for sale to anybody, then you take out the safety. With that, there is just no going back. You cannot thrive as a neighborhood. So I always elevate the voice of the victims. There's nothing more powerful than hearing from the people affected and being on the ground, because that is just avoids all politics, and that's how I handle my region.
And you've been a district attorney for how long?
This is my second term.
Okay,
so
but
5 years.
You've obviously been a prosecutor.
33 years.
33 years, and I would assume that at no point in prepping for a trial or anything like that, and at least in my career in the NYPD, one question that is never asked by those when they're responding to a 911 call is, what political party are you from?
Exactly. No police report ever shows that.
Thank you. And I had some questions, but my time has run out for Mr. Glenn from Home Depot. If we could chat after, that would be great. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today.